Three university archaeology students, Akira, Yuki, and Marcus, stumbled upon an overgrown shrine complex in Nagano Prefecture while researching pre-Edo period settlements. The site had been abandoned for centuries, buried beneath moss-covered stone and tangled roots. Local records mentioned the shrine only in passing, and modern maps showed nothing. What began as a weekend survey expedition became an obsession when Akira discovered a ceramic tile bearing dates that didn't match official historical records. Beneath the main temple, they found evidence of a sealed chamber, one that had remained untouched for over 300 years. Inside lay scrolls written in classical Japanese, their edges brittle and darkened with age. The texts described forgotten rituals, spiritual practices, and a knowledge system that had been deliberately hidden from the broader world. As they carefully photographed and translated the documents, they realized they had uncovered something far more significant than they had imagined. A window into a suppressed chapter of Japanese religious history, one that powerful institutions had taken great pains to conceal. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Sanctuary. The forest near Nagano had swallowed the shrine centuries ago. Trees twisted around stone foundations, their roots cracking through ancient mortar like patient hands prying open a locked door. Akira pushed back a curtain of hanging vines, his flashlight beam cutting through the green dimness. Behind him, Yuki stepped carefully over a weathered torii gate, its red paint flaked away to bare wood. Marcus brought up the rear, his camera already clicking, documenting everything, as their professor had insisted. "There," Akira said, pointing to a structure barely visible through the vegetation. The main hall rose from the earth like a half-buried skull, its roof partially collapsed, exposing dark timber frames against the gray morning sky. Moss covered every surface, thick and velvet swallowing sound. The air smelled of decay and damp soil, layered with the green scent of living wood. Yuki consulted her tablet, comparing satellite imagery with what lay before them. The survey from 1988 marked this area as uninhabitable ruins, but there's no archaeological record. Nothing. It's like someone deliberately erased it from documentation. That absence was what had drawn Akira here. He'd been researching provincial shrines when he noticed the gap, a region with no listed historical sites, which was itself suspicious. 3 weeks of digging through prefectural archives had yielded only vague references to sacred grounds relocated in the Meiji period. A phrase, nothing more. But phrases hide secrets. Marcus climbed the stone steps leading to the main hall, testing each one. The stone was solid, worn smooth by centuries of feet. "Look at the carvings," he said, crouching. Faint symbols ran along the base of each step, not typical shrine iconography. The patterns were more abstract, geometric, almost mathematical in their precision. Akira knelt beside him, tracing the grooves with his fingers. "These aren't offering symbols. They're directions? A sequence?" "Or wards," Yuki said quietly, her voice carrying an edge. She stood at the hall's entrance, her flashlight illuminating an interior so dark it seemed to absorb light. The kind meant to keep people out, or something in. The temperature dropped noticeably as they approached the threshold. Rational minds might dismiss it as the natural coolness of stone and shadow, but standing there, with the forest pressing in from all sides and centuries of silence hanging in the air, it felt deliberate, intentional. Inside, the darkness was almost solid, their flashlight beams scattered weakly, revealing collapsed support beams, scattered tiles, and debris. But there, to the left, where the floor dropped away, Akira saw stone steps descending into shadow. "No one mentioned a basement," Marcus said. His camera continued its steady clicking, capturing angles and details his eyes hadn't fully processed yet. Yuki was already moving toward the stairs, because no one was supposed to know it existed. Her voice held certainty, but her hand gripped her flashlight tightly. "Come on." The descent took 2 minutes that felt much longer. The air grew colder and somehow heavier, carrying a smell like old paper and minerals. The walls on either side of the staircase bore more of those carved symbols, but here they were clearer, purposeful. At the base, a wooden door stood sealed with iron bands. its surface marked with deep gouges, claw marks, or perhaps tool strikes from someone attempting to force it open long ago. Akira approached slowly. The wood was surprisingly intact, preserved by the constant cold and dry air. No lock mechanism, just bands and deteriorated cedar. He pushed gently, and the door swung inward on silent hinges, as if waiting. The chamber beyond was roughly 10 meters square, its walls lined with wooden shelves. On those shelves sat scrolls, dozens of them, some in wooden cases, others wrapped in silk now reduced to fragments. In the center of the room stood a small altar, bare except for dust and a single stone figurine of a Shinto deity, its features worn smooth by time. "My God," Yuki whispered. Marcus was already photographing, his camera shutter breaking the silence in rapid bursts. Each image captured what 300 years of concealment had preserved. A library of forgotten knowledge, deliberately hidden, deliberately sealed, deliberately abandoned. Akira lifted one scroll carefully from its case. The silk wrapping crumbled to dust at his touch, but the paper beneath held. The first characters were unmistakable, spiritual rites of the old order. Below, dates written in classical Japanese, and beneath those, a single warning phrase, "Forbidden to all who serve the new way." He exchanged looks with Yuki and Marcus. They had come looking for archaeological curiosities, local history to enhance a university thesis. Instead, they had opened a door that someone had spent considerable effort to keep sealed. Whatever lay in these scrolls had been worth hiding. The question was why. Chapter 2. The Language of Shadows. Back at the university library, Akira carefully unrolled the first scroll on archival paper, his hands trembling slightly. 300 years of darkness had preserved the text perfectly. The ink remained dark, the classical Japanese characters crisp and deliberate. Yuki sat across from him, her laptop open, cross-referencing the characters with historical databases. Marcus worked methodically through the photographs, organizing them chronologically, creating a digital record of everything they had found. "This changes things," Yuki said quietly, her eyes scanning the screen. "These characters match a writing style from the 1680s, possibly earlier, but they're not standard shrine documentation. Look at the vocabulary. These are terms I've only seen in private religious texts, family records. Sacred knowledge meant to pass from teacher to student, not from institution to institution." Akira read aloud from the scroll. "The spirits that dwell in stone and water do not answer to ceremony alone. They answer to understanding. The priest who merely recites words is deaf to their truth, but the one who learns the old language, who reads the signs in shadow and light, in the breaking of branches and the stillness of birds, this one speaks with the voice of the earth itself." "That's not standard Shinto doctrine," Marcus said, looking up from his camera. "Shinto emphasizes purification and proper ritual, but this sounds like shamanism? Or something pre-Shinto." "Exactly," Yuki replied, her voice tight with realization. "This is heterodox knowledge. During the Edo period, the shogunate was consolidating religious authority. They standardized Shinto practice, eliminated regional variations, suppressed anything that didn't fit their order. A shrine teaching unauthorized spiritual practices, teaching people to commune with nature spirits independently, without institutional mediation, that would have been a direct threat to authority." Akira pulled out another scroll, this one heavier, its case marked with emergency seals, wax impressed with official stamps. So they didn't destroy these texts. They sealed them away, hid them so thoroughly that even the location of the shrine was erased from records. "Someone wanted them preserved," Marcus observed. "That door wasn't meant to keep people out forever. It was meant to keep them out until what? Until the political situation changed? Until someone who understood their value could find them." Yuki's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and set it face down on the table. Akira noticed her jaw tighten. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing, just Professor Nakamura asking if we've found anything of value in Nagano. He wants to know our timeline for filing the report." Marcus and Akira exchanged a glance. Their professor had been vague about the scope of their research project, unusually so for someone typically meticulous about academic protocols. And he'd been very specific: photograph everything, document locations, but don't discuss preliminary findings with anyone outside the research group. "Did you tell him about the scrolls?" Akira asked carefully. "No. I said we found some foundation work and would need more time for analysis." Yuki's eyes returned to the scroll. He didn't push, just said to be careful that some sites attract attention from people with interests beyond archaeology. The implication hung in the air between them. Akira set down the scroll and leaned back, the weight of what they'd found suddenly pressing down. These texts weren't just historical curiosities. They were forbidden knowledge, the kind worth burying, the kind that institutions still had reason to want buried. "We need to continue translation," Akira said finally, "but carefully. No emails about content, no public discussion, not until we understand what we're dealing with." Yuki nodded slowly. "Agreed, Marcus. Keep the photographs encrypted and backed up in multiple locations." As Marcus gathered his camera equipment, Akira returned to the scroll, reading deeper into the strange, beautiful language of a spiritual practice that had been deemed too dangerous to survive. Outside the library windows, the afternoon had turned gray and cold. The city felt suddenly distant, and the little room with its 3 students and ancient scrolls felt very small indeed. Chapter 3. Patterns in Stone. 2 weeks passed in careful, quiet work. Yuki had located a retired professor of classical Japanese literature, someone outside their university, and, with elaborate discretion, shared photographs of select passages. His response had been immediate. "Where did you find these? These are not copies. These are originals, and they should not exist." Now, standing once again in the forest near Nagano, Akira realized that the scrolls had only been half the puzzle. The shrine itself held clues written in stone and spatial arrangement. He stood at the temple's center, the morning mist clinging to the ground, and studied the carved symbols Yuki had documented. Marcus moved methodically, measuring distances between the main hall, the altar, and the location of the sealed chamber below. "Look at this," Marcus called, beckoning them toward the rear of the temple complex, where a low stone wall formed a rough circle. "The foundation line doesn't match the visible structure. There's a pattern underneath." They cleared away moss and debris, revealing symbols carved into the foundation stones, a geometric design that resembled a map or diagram. Concentric circles intersected with lines and angles, all oriented toward the cardinal directions. "It's a cosmological diagram," Yuki breathed, pulling out her tablet to compare it with historical references. "Like the ones used in esoteric Buddhism, but modified. These annotations, they're recording the positions of significant natural features: the river to the north, the rock formation to the east, the cave system to the south." Akira knelt, running his fingers across the ancient carvings. "It's not just a map, it's instructions. Someone standing here could use these markers to navigate, to find other sites," Marcus finished. "If this was one shrine, there might be others, part of a network." The implication was staggering. Not a single hidden location, but an entire system of sacred sites, connected by knowledge, marked by symbols, protected by sealed documents that explained their significance and proper use. Yuki's phone rang. She checked the screen and her face paled. "It's Professor Nakamura. He's calling from the university, and there's someone with him." She hesitated, then answered on speaker. "Hello, Professor?" Static crackled, then Nakamura's voice came through, carefully formal. "Akira, Yuki, Marcus, I need you to listen very carefully. I've been contacted by a representative of a cultural preservation society. They've learned that you've been documenting an undocumented shrine in Nagano. They would like to discuss your findings. I'm sending them your location. They should arrive within the hour." Before any of them could respond, the line went dead. The 3 students stood in the misty forest, surrounded by stones carved with ancient secrets. In the distance, the sound of an engine echoed between the trees, growing gradually louder. "We need to get back to the chamber," Akira said quietly. "Now." If you're enjoying this adventure so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Chapter 4. The Arrival of Others. The vehicle that emerged from the forest path was a black SUV, unmarked and professional. 3 people emerged, a woman in her 50s wearing an expensive coat, a younger man with sharp eyes and a tablet, and an elderly gentleman whose bearing suggested authority. Yuki whispered urgently, "The chamber. We photograph everything and secure copies before." "Too late," Marcus said. The woman had already spotted them. She approached with measured steps, her smile practiced. "You must be the archaeology students. I'm Tomo Sato, director of the Heritage Preservation Committee. We understand you've made quite a discovery here." Akira's mind raced. Heritage Preservation Committee. That wasn't an official government body. Private interest, then. But whose? "We're conducting a routine survey," Yuki said carefully. "Standard university fieldwork. In a location that isn't listed on any official map," the elderly man observed. His voice carried an accent Akira couldn't quite place. "A shrine that, according to all records, was relocated in 1871. Yet here it stands, complete, with underground structures your professors are apparently very interested in." The younger man was already examining their equipment, taking note of what they documented. Sato's smile never wavered. "The scrolls you found, they're part of Japan's religious heritage. Cultural property, technically. They should be in institutional care, properly preserved, properly understood. We represent several museums and cultural organizations who would very much like to ensure their safety and appropriate study." "We haven't removed anything," Akira said. "Everything is still in the chamber, exactly as we found it." "But you have photographed it," the elderly man said. It wasn't a question. "And you've shown images to outside experts. That information is now dispersed. Once information escapes, it becomes very difficult to control." There was something unsettling in his phrasing. Control rather than preserve or study. Akira felt Yuki shift slightly beside him, her tension palpable. "The scrolls contain forbidden knowledge, Imanal," the man continued. "Religious practices that were deliberately suppressed for very good reasons. Practices that, in the wrong hands, cause social disruption. The shogunate understood this. The modern government has equally understood it. Some knowledge is dangerous precisely because it speaks to something deep in human nature, a desire to bypass institutions, to seek direct connection with forces beyond ourselves. The scrolls teach techniques that enable exactly that. They were sealed not out of mere censorship, but out of pragmatic wisdom." Marcus had stepped back closer to the forest edge. "Who exactly do you represent?" The elderly man smiled faintly. "People who understand that stability is more valuable than truth. Now I'm going to ask you very directly, where are the scrolls? All of them, not just what we've already seen photographed. And have you translated the entire set?" Yuki spoke up, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "We're students. This is research. The scrolls are historical artifacts that deserve academic study and public knowledge." "History is written by the winners," Sato said, her tone shifting to something harder, "and those who maintain power. These texts, if widely known, would undermine certain institutions' authority over spiritual practice in Japan. There are people, powerful people, who have spent considerable effort ensuring these scrolls remained hidden. Your discovery is inconvenient." The younger man had moved slightly, positioning himself between the students and the path back to their vehicle. It wasn't overtly threatening, but the message was clear. "We need to see the chamber," the elderly man said, "and you're going to take us there. Now." Chapter 5. The Choice Below. The sealed chamber seemed smaller with 5 people inside it. The scrolls on their shelves suddenly looked fragile, vulnerable. Sato moved toward them immediately, her expression one of hunger barely masked by professional courtesy. "Extraordinary," she murmured. "How many are there?" 47 complete scrolls," Yuki said quietly, "plus fragmentary texts and 3 jade tablets with inscriptions." The elderly man examined the small altar, studying the worn statue of the Shinto deity. This shrine was part of the Nakaomi network, he said, almost to himself. One of the 12. There should be documentation about the others, about the connection. It's all here, Akira said. He hadn't intended to speak, but the words came out. In the scrolls, a complete map, locations, practices, lineage records showing which families maintained the knowledge. Everything your people wanted erased. The elderly man turned to face him fully, and for a moment genuine surprise flickered across his face. Then his expression settled into something that might have been respect. You've translated it. It wasn't a question. Akira said nothing. Bring them all, Sato instructed the younger man. They fit in the cases. We'll take them to the vehicle. Marcus stepped forward, his voice sharp. Those are historical artifacts, Japanese cultural property. You can't simply remove them. We're not removing anything, the elderly man said. We're preserving them. These scrolls will be secured in a private collection where they cannot cause social instability or undermine established religious authority. That's not theft, young man. That's stewardship. That's erasure, Yuki said. The same erasure that happened in 1871. Some people decide that truth is dangerous, so they hide it, and everyone accepts it because those people have power. The elderly man studied her carefully. You understand then? Good. That makes what happens next simpler. Either you come with us, continue your research under our direction, and publish nothing without approval, or you disappear from this project entirely, and the scrolls are never recovered, never studied, never known to have existed. Your professor has already accepted the first option. He's being quite well compensated. The implication of betrayal hung like smoke. Nakamura had arranged this, had guided them to the discovery specifically so that these people could claim it. Marcus moved suddenly, reaching for the sealed jade tablets. Sato's man intercepted him, not violently but firmly. In that moment, with the chamber suddenly claustrophobic and hostile, Akira realized they had three choices: comply, resist futilely, or make a choice that would define what happened to the scrolls. Yuki's hand found his, squeezing once. A signal. She'd already decided. Akira pulled out his phone, and with a single swipe, initiated the upload sequence they'd prepared weeks earlier. All photographs, all translations, all analysis uploaded simultaneously to multiple independent archives, academic databases, and media outlets. Anonymized sources, but complete data. The elderly man watched with horrible calm as Akira's finger moved toward the final button. You'll regret this, Sato said quietly. Probably, Yuki agreed. But at least the truth survives. Akira pressed send. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the devices in their pockets all buzzed simultaneously. Confirmation notifications across multiple platforms. The knowledge was loose now. Irretrievable. Free. The elderly man's face hardened. He nodded to his companion, who moved toward the entrance. Secure them upstairs, he ordered. We'll decide what to do with them once we confirm the extent of their distribution. And Tomo. We need to establish where all 47 scrolls originated. If there are 12 sites, we need to find the others before this becomes public knowledge. As rough hands guided them toward the stairs, Akira caught one final glimpse of the chamber, the altar, the scrolls bathed in flashlight beam, the jade tablets bearing inscriptions no one had yet deciphered. He had opened that door. Now the world would walk through it. Above, the forest was quiet. In the distance, they could hear the gentle sound of the river flowing, indifferent to human schemes and secrets. Chapter 6. The Weight of Discovery. 3 months later, Akira sat in a small apartment in Tokyo, on the run from people whose names he still didn't know. The university had dismissed him quietly, citing violation of research protocols. His parents had stopped answering his calls after the police came to their door with questions. Marcus was in hiding somewhere in Southeast Asia. Only Yuki maintained contact, cryptic messages through encrypted channels. But the scrolls were free. The academic world had erupted when the photographs and translations appeared simultaneously across 5 continents. The text was genuine, confirmed by 7 independent experts in classical Japanese and Edo period religious history. The discovery had been labeled the most significant Japanese archaeological find in decades. Suddenly, the suppressed shrine network was the subject of documentaries, symposiums, and international scholarly debate. The government had launched an investigation into unauthorized distribution of cultural artifacts. But they couldn't suppress the information now. Too many copies existed. Too many scholars had already begun translating, analyzing, contextualizing. The knowledge that had been deliberately buried for 3 centuries was now part of the historical record. Nakamura had resigned quietly, his involvement with the Heritage Preservation Committee leaked by someone. Akira suspected other factions within the academic establishment, competing for control of the narrative. Sato had disappeared entirely. The elderly man remained unidentified, though rumors circulated about him being connected to certain political families with deep historical ties to religious institutions. Yuki had managed to publish a preliminary analysis, claiming the scrolls were discovered in a private collection, and she was one of several researchers invited to study them. Her paper had been rejected, then accepted, then briefly retracted, then finally published in an independent journal that faced no institutional pressure. The academic gatekeeping still existed, but it was cracking. More significantly, the locations of the other 11 shrine sites in the network had begun surfacing. Researchers were finding them in forests and rural areas, most in states similar to the first, abandoned, overgrown, erased from official records but preserved in fragmentary local knowledge. 3 had already been excavated, yielding additional scrolls, stone carvings, and artifacts that filled in the picture of a sophisticated spiritual system that had flourished before institutional consolidation. The scrolls themselves described practices of meditation, observation, and connection with natural phenomena, techniques for understanding ecological patterns, weather prediction, and what might be called intuitive problem-solving. They contained no claims of magic, no violations of physical law. Instead, they recorded a knowledge system grounded in careful attention to the natural world, preserved through lineages of families and communities. The forbidden label had been assigned not because they were false or dangerous in any supernatural sense, but because they represented an alternative authority, a way of knowing that didn't require institutional mediation. That was the real threat. That had always been the real threat. Akira received an email from Marcus, routed through anonymizers and forwarded multiple times. A single line. They found the 12th site. It's a cave system in Kyushu. The scrolls there are different, older, possibly from before the Edo period. Someone needs to study them before they disappear again. He forwarded the message to Yuki, knowing she'd understand the implication. The work wasn't finished. The knowledge they'd released into the world had opened doors that institutions couldn't close. But there were still doors waiting to be opened, still chambers sealed by centuries of concealment, still stories that had been buried. The question was, who would find them next? And would those people have the courage to share what they discovered? Outside his apartment window, Tokyo sprawled in electric light and noise. Somewhere in that city, people were reading translations of the Forbidden Scrolls. Students were questioning what they'd been taught about religious history. Scholars were reassessing their understanding of pre-modern Japan. The consensus was cracking slowly, the way ice breaks in spring. Akira opened his laptop and began to write, a detailed account of the discovery, the chamber, the choice they'd made to release the information. It wouldn't be published soon, perhaps not for years. But it would exist. It would be truth, preserved in digital form, waiting for someone with the vision to understand its significance. The adventure had ended in a chamber underground, but its consequences continued to unfold in the light above. The scrolls taught that real power came not from controlling knowledge but from understanding it deeply enough to share it wisely. Akira had learned that lesson more harshly than he might have wished, but he had learned it. The true value of the discovery wasn't in the scrolls themselves, though they were invaluable. The true value lay in what they represented, the possibility that suppressed knowledge could resurface, that truth could outlast institutional censorship, that even when one person or one group held power, others could still choose to act with integrity. In the quiet of his hidden apartment, Akira continued writing. And somewhere in the world, Yuki and Marcus were doing the same, preserving the story, ensuring that the adventure they'd lived through would be remembered not as a discovery of scrolls, but as a moment when three students chose truth over safety, and in doing so, changed what history would remember. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of discovery and hidden history. See you in the next adventure.